Lock and Barrel watched their compatriot warily, each adjusting his position in turn, so as to be the one farther away from her. Said Barrel. He scuffled the floor with a bare foot. Agreed Lock. He wrung the pointed tail of his devil costume in his hands. Shock looked up from her project and shot her allies a fierce stare.
What? Haven't you ever seen somebody building a pony trapper before?
No, they replied in unison.
We only just found out what a pony was,
said Barrel.
And plus, you can't trap the Pumpkin Queen,
added Lock.
Yeah, said Barrel. This isn't like the bunny or the old guy. She's important.
I'm not going to trap the Pumpkin Queen, Shock said with a grin. Said Lock and Barrel. Shock groaned in irritation.
Weren't you two dummies watching at the announcement? There are more of them now.
She hefted her creation in both hands, testing its weight. It resembled a bulky crossbow in profile, but its bundled payload was far, far larger than an arrow.
I'm gonna trap a different pony.
Oh, said Shock's cohorts.
That's different.
The three trick-or-treaters shared a sinister chuckle. Pinkie Pie scampered through the streets of Halloween Town at incredible speed, pausing now and then to stare at interesting decorations or peck at fallen candy in the streets. Shadow Dash was hot on her trail, her multi-hued contrail standing out sharply against the gray and black backdrop of the town. She was more than a match for her quarry on a straightaway, but those were few and far between in Halloween Town.
Can't catch me,
said Pinkie over her shoulder. Shadow Dash gritted her teeth and poured on still more speed. Despite Pinkie's best effort, her Pegasus pursuer slowly closed the gap between them. Bit by bit, the Shadow Bolt drew nearer to the chicken. They were soon close enough that Dash could slap at Pinkie's tail feathers with her front hooves. Catching her seemed all but inevitable, but then a voice from the edge of a nearby rooftop shouted,
"Gotcha!"
With an echoing twang, a large rope net ensnared both ponies into a tumbling roll, and the whole mess crashed over a nearby shop.
Smashing pumpkins!
Lock swore. I can't believe that worked.
Why wouldn't it work?
Replied Shock huffily.
The bathtub works. You just found that on a trash heap, said Barrel. I also housebroke it, thank you very much.
Shock set down her pony trapper and headed for the building's fire escape.
Come on, it's time to nab some ponies.
Wait, said Lock. You can't. He pointed down at the shop sign. Shock peered over the roof's edge and sighed in frustration.
Oh, raisins,
she swore.
A costume shop.
Can't do mischief in a costume shop, said Barrel. He unwrapped a piece of taffy and popped it into his wide mouth. It's very good. I know, said Shock.
Well, they can't stay in there forever, and when they come out, we'll be waiting.
Applejack's repaired top and bottom halves hung in midair, suspended by Twilight's magic. The unicorn floated the last of the Earth Pony's scarecrow's straw back into place, and then started sewing her back together with conjured thread. Hey, careful! That tickles something fierce! Applejack squirmed and kicked at the air. Sorry, said Twilight. I may be an arc wizard, but sewing is really a more rarity specialty. Once Twilight completed her work, she set her restored companion back down on her hooves. That's more like it, said Applejack, rearing and kicking experimentally. Yay, said Fluttershy weakly, still somewhat shaken by her brush with her own stare. Twilight jabbed her staff into the ground imperiously. Okay, Pinkie has run away, but Pumpkin Queen's second in command, so the way is clear. It's time for an epic confrontation! She posed courageously for a moment, and then turned to face the tower. She magicked open its sizable front doors and strode forth. Her fellow party members followed. The interior of the tower was festooned with black and purple ribbons and gemstones, and fanciful carved pumpkins lit with violet fairy fire rested on every available surface. The sound of the adventurers' hoofsteps and branch steps echoed in the eerie silence. That way, said Twilight, gesturing to a grand spiral staircase. She'll be at the top of the tower. How'd you know that? Asked Applejack. "The Dark Queen is always at the top of the tower," replied Twilight, as if it were the most obvious fact in the world. "You martial types really ought to brush up on your lore skills."
"But lore skills cost double for warriors," interjected Fluttershy.
Applejack and Twilight stared at the tree in mild disbelief.
We should hurry."
"Get off of me! Shadow Dash and Pinkie Pie struggled to escape from the net. Almost in unison, Dash freed her wings and Pinkie freed her feet. They immediately started pulling in opposite directions. Pinkie's head popped partway through a space in the net. The tight fit pulled out her costume as she strained to break free. On the other side of the net, the ropes creaked as Dash flapped her wings faster and faster. With a final snap and tear, the net gave way, and the two ponies crashed into opposite sides of the room. Pinkie rolled under a pile of wooden boxes, while Dash struck and tipped over a shelf of wigs and dye. Pinkie popped out from between the boxes, her eyes dazedly rolling. She shook her head until it rattled and came to her senses.
"Hey," she said, "my costume tore off."
An earth pony once more, the former chicken hopped out of the pile of boxes and trotted over to the demolished far side of the room. She peered down at the pile of fallen wigs and spilled dyes.
"Are you okay, Dashie?"
Pinkie hoofed aside the broken remains of the shelf, revealing her erstwhile enemy.
"Okay,"
said Dash, her voice oddly high-pitched.
"I'm more than okay. I'm super-de-duper."
Outside the shop, the three trick-or-treaters paced in varying amounts of impatience. Shock, pacing with most speed and least calm, finally stopped and clenched her fist.
"I can't take it."
She ran up to the shop's smashed front door and pounded a fist on the frame.
"Come out, ponies! We know you're in there!"
Two pairs of wide, shining eyes came into view in the shadowy depths of the costume shop. The owners of the eyes paused and spoke.
"Looks like we have guests." "We sure do."
"And you know what that means."
"Yep."
"What?" asked Shock, an edge of nervousness creeping into her voice. The tall double doors to the Pumpkin Queen's inner sanctum glowed red and then swung inward, revealing a wizard, a scarecrow, and a tree. "Come home, Pumpkin Queen!" Twilight bellowed, pointing her staff. "You don't belong in this world!" Rarity tittered from her black iron throne upon which she was lounging. "It was not by my hoof that I found myself here." She levitated a glass of Halloween punch and took a dainty sip. "But I was called here by creatures who wished to pay me tribute." Twilight stepped forward. "Tribute? You stole these folks' attention and made them your slaves!" Rarity scoffed. "I suppose that some could be said of all holidays." Applejack leaned over to Fluttershy and whispered,
What are they talking about?"
Fluttershy shrugged.
"I have no idea."
Twilight pounded her staff against the stone floor. "Your words are as empty as your bookshelf! This town ill needs a ruler such as you!" "What is a wizard?" Rarity tossed aside her glass, letting it shatter on the floor. "A miserable little pile of bad-fashioned sense! Enough talk! Have at you!" She leapt to her hoofs and ignited her horn. The chamber's stone walls took on a blue glow of Rarity's magic and began to reconfigure themselves. In moments, the throne room had opened into a wide arena, open to the night sky. Curved pillars topped with jack-o'-lanterns provided eerie mood lighting. Twilight squared off with her nemesis in the windy platform. Her own horn glowed under her hat, and her staff held up defensively. Far below, a gathered crowd of Halloween Town residents stared up in fascination. With a mutual battle cry, the two unicorns began their duel.
"Run faster!"
screamed Locke as he skidded around a corner and charged down Halloween Town's main street. Shock and Barrel followed close on their heels.
"They're monsters!"
whirred Barrel.
"How do they keep gaining on us?"
asked Shock breathlessly.
"I don't know! Run!"
Locke looked to the side and leapt away in terror.
"Not that way, the other way!"
The young mischief maker scrambled to change directions. Barrel pointed down the side street.
"That way, to the tower!"
The trio ran toward the tower as fast as their legs could carry them, their path a zigzag of starts and frights at every dark alley and large object. They pushed their way through the crowd surrounding the tower and started climbing the spiral staircase. Behind them, high-pitched giggling echoed off the stone walls. explosions of red and blue on the platform. Magical constructs shaped like bats, wolves, dragons, ghosts, pony skeletons, and creatures still more bizarre fought in 2s and 3s around the clashing unicorns. With every defeated construct and every blazing burst of magic, the crowd below cheered, oohed, and awed.
"You'll never take me back!"
shouted the Pumpkin Queen as she conjured a roaring werewolf. Her wizardly opponent countered with a phantom manticore. "Don't be so sure." "That's the spirit!" cheered Applejack. "Show that fancy filly what's what!"
"Yeah, but just don't hurt her, okay?"
said Fluttershy. Flashing unicorns could bring further battle magic to bear. The rattling sound of scampering feet rose up from the stairwell. 3 panicked trick-or-treaters dressed as a devil, a witch, and a skeleton leapt through the entryway, now set in the floor, and slammed the doors behind them. The unicorn magical constructs paused. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" asked Rarity.
"You gotta hide us,"
begged Beryl. "They're crazy," insisted Locke.
"You look great in that dress,"
added Shock hesitantly. The white unicorn blushed demurely and tittered behind a hoof. "It is lovely, isn't it?" shook her head. "But that's beside the point. What are you 3 yammering on about? I happen to be engaged in an epic confrontation here." She pointed to Twilight, who was waiting politely for the duel to continue. "Don't mind me," said the purple unicorn. "Talking's a free action after all." "Well, it's still awfully rude," continued Rarity. "Instead of whatever all this is, you should be busying yourselves planning my coordination party."
"No!"
screamed Locke, Shock, and Beryl.
"Did some ponies say party?"
The doors upon which Locke, Shock, and Beryl were huddled burst open. Suddenly, the 3 young rascals, flying a pair of party ponies, climbed up into the stone platform, wheeling a blue cannon between them. One was the unmistakable and irrepressible Pinkie Pie, and so was the other. "What the?" said Applejack, Fluttershy, Twilight, and Rarity. As the assembled ponies stared, the differences between the 2 revelers became more apparent. For one thing, the Pinkie on the right's hide was unevenly pink and marked with thin seams, and her frizzy mane was off-center and styled in a slightly different mess of curls. In addition, she seemed to be wearing a pair of blue painted goggles. And lastly, she had wings. "Dash?" said Twilight in disbelief. "What happened to you?" The Pinkies giggled and snorted in stereo. "Oh, Twilight," they said in unison, "you're so silly." "I'm not Dash, I'm Pinkie Pie." The Pinkies pointed the cannon at Fluttershy and fired. The tree leapt in fear and covered her eyes, but when she hazarded a peek, she found that her branches were now garlanded with festive black and orange ribbons and small pumpkin-shaped ornaments.
"Oh, this isn't so bad,"
she said. "Do you mind?" asked Rarity. "Epic confrontation! Magical duel! We're a bit busy here." In the distance, a bell began tolling.
"Oh, don't mind me," said both Pinkies. "Just pretend I'm not here."
They fired the cannon again, festooning a pillar with confetti and streamers. Rarity groaned and slid a front hoof down her face. Twilight pondered for a moment, and then inspiration brightened her features. She stepped forward. "Mighty Pumpkin Queen," she said sternly, "I cannot continue this duel. I am no match for your magical prowess, and I have the good grace to know when I am bested. I doffed my hat to the better pony." Twilight knelt on bended knee and magicked off her bell-trimmed wizard hat. Rarity beamed. "I applaud your sage and accurate decision," she said, and removed her tiara as Twilight gave a small curtsy. Both unicorns staggered dazedly for a moment and shook their heads. Were we engaged in a Gerdaman?" said Twilight. "Are there 2 Pinkies?" added Rarity. She moved to put her hovering tiara back on her head. "Oh, no, you don't," said Applejack. She surged forward and snatched up the tiara in her jaws. "Y'all aren't crazy anymore, so we're going in 'em." "Yay, home!" said both Pinkies. As the distant bell tolled for the 12th time, Halloween Town's rotund mayor popped up through the platform's hatch. Well done, he said, his friendly face turned firm. "This is the most exciting Halloween celebration." He pottered over to the edge of the platform and raised a megaphone to his mouth.
The Pumpkin Queen is defeated,
he bellowed to the crowd below.
Long live the Pumpkin King!
The gathered throng exploded into raucous cheering and applause. Rarity gasped. But wait! Where is the Pumpkin Queen? Where's Jack? The mayor turned to face her. Don't you remember? You were a key part of his plan. The mayor pulled a piece of paper out of his jacket pocket. The white unicorn stared. Jack planned all of this? The mayor chuckled. Of course. No one can create a Halloween event quite like Jack. I get nervous every year, but that skeleton never fails to create something spectacular. The mayor's head clanked around to show his unhappy face. Oh no, I've got to start preparing for next Halloween. So little time. He headed for the hatch. Time, said Twilight with a start. We're running out of time. Come on, every pony. We've got to get back to that tree.